Dear friends, another week packed with major events for the BRICS world and global geopolitics. Our mission: bring you stories and insights that mainstream media ignores or buries entirely. This episode has some unique and eye-opening updates. Stick with me until the end for a deeper look at the international chessboard. Here is what's on deck. The 47th ASEAN meeting. Brazil's President Lula went face to face with Trump. High stakes, serious implications. New potential BRICS candidates from Asia. They are ready to step onto the global stage. New maritime trade corridors. Rising geopolitical tensions around a remote Arctic archipelago. And he's back. Jim O'Neill, the man who coined BRICS, weighs in on the group's future with some bold predictions. But first, a quick thank you to everyone who took a moment to send me birthday wishes. Yes, that was the other big headline last week. I didn't see it coming and I'm genuinely moved. This is also a strong reminder that what we are building here at Think BRICS isn't just informative, but meaningful too. And it's thanks to an amazing community like you. All right, enough the warm and fuzzy stuff. Let's get to the news. October 2025, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, the 47th ASEAN Summit. This is where Brazil's President Lula pulled off something remarkable. He sat down with President Trump for 45 minutes, not a quick handshake, not a scripted statement, an actual negotiation. Brazil's foreign minister confirmed there were no forbidden topics. Lula came with two specific demands: remove the 50% tariffs on Brazilian products, review the Magnitsky Act sanctions against Brazilian officials. These weren't polite requests. Trump had imposed these measures over Brazil's domestic political disputes. Lula called it what it was: economic pressure over internal affairs. Here is what matters. Trump agreed to start bilateral negotiations immediately. Think about that timeline. A BRICS nation presents demands. The US agrees to negotiate within days. That's not the dynamic we have seen for the past 80 years. But Lula didn't stop there. He positioned Brazil as a mediator between Washington and Caracas on Venezuela. He offered to be the interlocutor to find solutions. This is a regional power saying, we'll handle our hemisphere. Thank you very much. Lula's exact words: Latin America needs, quote, respect, cooperation, and justice, not more invasions, end of a quote. Strong language backed by economic weight. Brazil leveraged its position in BRICS to force recalibration, not as a supplicant, as an equal. So, why are countries lining up to join BRICS? Pakistan is dealing with a serious economic crisis. The International Monetary Fund has been its lifeline for years, but those loans come with conditions, tough ones. Pakistan formally applied for BRICS membership in 2023. They are expected to join during the 2025 or 2026 summit. Why the rush? One word: alternatives. The new development bank founded by BRICS has $100 billion in authorized capital. It offers development funding without the policy restrictions that come with Western institutions. Pakistan's finance minister literally called China an iron friend while seeking support for NDB membership. This isn't about ideology, it's about options. When you are a developing nation and only one lender is available, you take whatever terms they offer. When you have two lenders competing, suddenly you have leverage. That's the game changer. Malaysia and Thailand became a BRICS partner country in October 2024. Now they want full membership. At the ASEAN Summit, President Lula made it clear Malaysia will have the support of Brazil to become a full member of BRICS. Lula called Malaysia a natural partner with shared values and growing economic potential. Indonesia, which just joined as a full member in January 2025, is backing Thailand's bid. Here is the pattern. Nations are adopting what analysts call multi-alignment, work with Washington on some issues, work with Beijing on others. Prioritize flexibility over loyalty. Question for you. Is this multi-alignment strategy smarter than picking sides? Let me know what you think. The expansion isn't just bureaucratic growth, it's a vote of no confidence in current system. Before we continue, I need to talk about how we keep this going. Think BRICS is a small operation. We are not backed by major media corporations. We don't have lobbying groups funding us. No big money people pulling strings behind the scenes. We depend entirely on viewers like you. If this analysis is valuable, consider supporting us. Subscribe to our Substack newsletter, share these videos, and if you can, contribute financially. Every cent helps us grow our team, do deeper research, and reach more people who need this perspective. The mainstream outlets have massive budgets. We have you. That's our strength. That's how we stay independent. All right, back to the news. Now let's talk about something concrete, literally. The Eastern Maritime Corridor just became operational. It connects Vladivostok, Russia, to Chennai, India. Here are the numbers. Traditional route via Suez Canal, 16,066 kilometers, 40 days transit time. New Eastern Maritime Corridor, 10,458 kilometers, 24 days. That's 5,608 kilometers shorter. That's 45% faster. This isn't a minor improvement. This changes cost structures for everyone involved. India's Minister of Ports confirmed the route will significantly reduce logistics costs and boost efficiency. The projection: bilateral maritime trade between India and Russia could hit $50 billion by 2030. But there is a strategic dimension here too. The Suez Canal is a choke point, always has been. One incident, one blockage, one geopolitical tension, and global trade slows down. Remember the Ever Given? One container ship stuck sideways shut down $9 billion in trade per day. The Eastern Maritime Corridor bypasses that vulnerability entirely. It's about resilience. It's about not putting all your eggs in one basket, or in this case, in one canal. Now, for something most people aren't tracking: the Arctic. Brazil is seeking to join the 1920 Svalbard Treaty. Stay with me because this matters. Svalbard is a Norwegian archipelago in the Arctic. The treaty gives all signatory nations equal access for scientific research, mining, and commercial operations. Russia already has a presence there. So does China with its Yellow River Station. India runs research in New Alisund. Brazil wants in, and they are discussing a possible joint scientific station with Russia in Pyramiden. Why does this matter? The Arctic is resource-rich. It has massive mineral deposits, fishing grounds, and potential shipping routes as ice melts. For decades, Arctic governance has been dominated by Western nations and the Arctic Council. Now, BRICS members are establishing their own footprint, using international law, exercising treaty rights. Russia hosted the sixth meeting of the BRICS Working Group on Ocean and Polar Science and Technology in Murmansk in 2024. They are inviting BRICS members and also Turkey and Thailand to participate in Arctic science cooperation. Establishing that BRICS nations have legitimate interests in every region of strategic importance. Meanwhile, Russia is deepening Barentsburg Harbor to 12 meters and building ship service facilities. They are creating infrastructure hubs that don't depend on Norwegian or Western European ports. The geopolitical atmosphere is intense up there. Claims and counterclaims fly constantly. But the BRICS strategy is straightforward: show up, establish presence, exercise legal rights, cooperate with partners. Do you remember Jim O'Neill? He coined the term BRIC in 2001 when he was at Goldman Sachs. Just the term. He created the acronym to describe emerging economies. That's it. At the AIM Summit in Dubai in 2025, he gave his assessment. His exact words: "There is certainly a shift of economic power, absolutely no two ways about it." The numbers back him up. Since 2001, China's economy grew 6 times larger. India's grew 4 times larger. India is close to becoming the world's third largest economy. China might match the US in size within a decade. O'Neill said the expanded BRICS group is significant because it symbolizes the woeful state of all the major global governance institutions. Translation: the IMF, World Bank, and other post-World War II institutions don't represent today's economic reality. They were designed when the West dominated global GDP. That's no longer true. So nations naturally gravitate toward platforms that give them a voice. But here is where it gets interesting. Everyone talks about BRICS creating a new currency to replace the dollar. O'Neill called that idea preposterous. Why? Because it would require members like India to give up central bank independence. Not happening. The real shift is more subtle and more powerful. Countries are trading in their own currencies. China is pushing Yuan invoicing. Ethiopia redenominated loans into Yuan. Other BRICS members are following suit. Central banks are also moving reserves into gold and away from dollars. This isn't dramatic, it's incremental, but it's structural. O'Neill attributed 80% of the dollar's 2025 decline to cyclical issues: weak US economy, struggling consumers. But 20%, that's structural instability caused by US policy choices, policy inconsistency, aggressive tariffs, public criticism of the Federal Reserve. O'Neill warning: if this continues, international investors will become a lot more careful about allocating money to the US. In other words, the de-dollarization that's happening is being accelerated by Washington's own actions. 4 stories, one thread. Brazil demanding respect and getting it. Pakistan and Thailand seeking alternatives to conditional Western finance. Infrastructure projects creating new trade routes outside traditional choke points. BRICS members establishing presence in the Arctic. Nations want options when negotiating. Developing countries want alternatives when one lender says no. They want shipping routes that don't depend on canals someone else controls. The Economist, who named BRICS, says the shift is real. The institutions that dominated the 20th century don't reflect 21st century economic weight. That imbalance creates pressure, and pressure creates change. Will we see genuine multipolarity with competing systems? Will existing institutions reform to stay relevant? Or will we get fragmentation and economic blocks that don't talk to each other? Those answers will define the next decade of global economics. The world is reorganizing. Pay attention to who's building what, where, and with whom. That's where the real story is. Thanks for watching.